Hey guys, this is a preview of something I'm probably going to cover in tonight. And it is February 20th, I think, on Mondays, our evening home church meeting. So I just thought I'd do this one separate from the reading. We'll be doing Revelation 4 tonight. So let's get on with it. So this is what I want to, just an all constant reminder that we're going to do, and that is this notion that, folks are separated from God, and it's Christ that connects us, that bridges this gap of our separation. And that's what we talk about with the gospel. We talk about sharing the gospel. We're sharing this good news of how we can be reconciled with Christ, the good news of how we can become spiritually alive again. And that's not to say that people without Christ aren't spiritually aware or very spiritual, period. But the reality is, and those of us who've come to Christ recognize that it's being born again is really different through Jesus Christ. So the question, I want to share that. And I know we all want to share that to do our job, right? We might know it in our head, but how do we share it? And so this is a little presentation to do that. The first part of our witness, of sharing the gospel, helping somebody else that we love with the same way somebody helped us. The first part really starts with the fact that I was lost. That's part of our good news. I was lost, and I really was lost. And I knew it. I didn't know what it was, but I knew there was a problem. And then I heard about Jesus. Right? That's what really changed it. I had heard about Jesus before, but at a particular time I heard it, and it really it made sense, right? All of a sudden, and that's the Holy Spirit or something opening up a door at just the right time. So there's folks, just like for you and people around us, they might have heard, sure, you in Georgia, good night, right? You've heard of Jesus. But they haven't heard the gospel in the way that's going to make the difference. Maybe they've been being prepared. So when we give the gospel, I think acknowledging that we're lost, and then we heard about Jesus. And we heard, for me, it was that he loved me. And that was in spite of everything I had done, that he'd love me. Because I was loved by my family, no doubt. I had friends, yet I still felt lonely and in some ways unloved or imperfectly accepted to some degree. But the fact that not just he's going to forgive my sins or something, but he had actually paid for my sins. When I realized he died for my sins, that's how much he loved me. That was such great news. I couldn't wait to get to know Jesus better, right? And then I accepted that forgiveness, because the forgiveness isn't just forgiveness. The forgiveness is that he paid for our sins. He bore that for us. And that's how I got saved. I accepted, please forgive me, right? Please forgive me, Jesus, And I realized when I did that, that was the born again process, that I'm going to accept his death for me, his life for my life, and I'm going to give my life to him. And so I accepted Christ's forgiveness, and for me, it was completely natural to give my life to Jesus, right? And then that meant that he's my Lord, right? That he's the master of my life. I'm mostly interested in what he wants, his will. And so I just love the fact that he's my Lord, that he's taken me in, and that love is one of the biggest driving factors there are in my life. And so it's not just a shallow love; it's an all my heart kind of love, all my life kind of love. But that's my gospel. I was lost, and I heard about Jesus and realized that he loved me no matter what I'd done, and that he paid the price. And so I accepted that forgiveness. And I did give him my life. And then he became Lord. And so I love him all the more. And honestly, I love him with more of my heart. And then I follow him. So that's how I would share the gospel. I like to think I should share it more like all of us probably. But that's all we need to do. That's our whole witness right there. Right? And and it is about love. Come to Jesus because he loves us, right? It really is. It really is love, love, love. God's love, love, love. Right? But God's really God. There really is a heaven. There's a place that we're going to go to that in eternity. There's a place that we can sort of be close to now. But as much as there's this good place, there's a reality of the world that we live in that is dominated by the devil. That's right, a big, nasty dragon, snake, whatever. The devil, Satan, and all of these other unclean things that have gone down the same path as him. Right? Whether it's some sort of fallen angels, or wicked angels, celestial, invisible beings, or whether it's demons and all these of the dead kind of thing, whether those are, whatever you think of demons are. But these things that plague humanity, that is the world that we live in. And we do live separated from God. Now, God shines light on us out of his goodness when we're still lost and feeds us and the rest of it. But we are lost. And there'll come a day when everyone who remains lost, right, remains their own way, will face eternal consequences that are much worse than anything this world has to offer. That's why I want to share that gospel, because I don't want anybody to face that. And thankfully, somebody shared the gospel with me. And I'm trying to share it with others. So that's why we should do it. That's a little bit of our idea. Another thing we're going to cover tonight is this. This was just a pop, something out there. I saw it on Netflix. This thing called His Dark Materials. I'd watched some of it, and it is really amazingly supernatural. But they really do lay out the story of how the fallen, at least in the Bible and maybe some of the other ancient books like Enoch, sort of convey the notion of how the fallen, rebellious, right, angels and whatnot, and then the humans that follow them, their perspective of denying who God is, and then basically challenging him, right? And so I had the minutes of the first season 1 or season 3, episode 1. These are the little times where I was going to go to. And it really does clear. It shows you really more clearly, especially after looking into the throne of heaven in Revelation 4 we did, and you start reading it. You can start seeing this obvious, hostile plan towards God. It talks about demons in this one. How and I don't want to go through all the details of it, but demons in this case, everybody has one, and if you don't have one. If you're separated from your demon, it's effectively being separated from your soul. So these entities, are souls, and of course they're supposed to dwell in humans, which is absolutely, amazing to listen to. And then just how the invert tempted, and it's just a little different time mark. So I'll do that tonight. Because, and I'm going to take a second here. I know I'm, 8 minutes in. So I'm going to read verses that deal with sorcery, devilry. I'm not even going to deal with the ones that deal with demons and Satan and the devil. That's a whole different, it's the same thing. But this is, when we think about humans, us interacting with the non-God spirit world, we are dealing with devils and demons and unclean spirits. Exclusively, right? Exclusively. Not that God can't send an angel to speak or engage with us. That's absolutely true. God sending an angel on a mission. Us inquiring of some kind of an invisible host, praying to him, listening to what these invisible things say. Those are all devils, right? 100%. Devils, demons, unclean spirit. How do we know that? Because by definition, it's rebellious. It's outside of what the Bible tells us. 100%. It doesn't care how beautiful they are, or what nice things they do for you, or what kind of good news they give you. It's 100% devilry, without exception, according to the Bible. And I'm going to read some verses that have started from early, like in Deuteronomy. This is amongst the Torah, the first 5 books. And these are only examples. There's more. A lot more. Deuteronomy 18. This is Moses, right? God talking through Moses. Verse 10. Let no one be found among you who sacrifices their sons or daughters in the fire, who practice divination or sorcery, interprets omens, engages in witchcraft, or casts spells, or who is a medium, or spiritist, or who consults the dead. Anyone who does these things is detestable to the Lord. Okay, so in 10:11 we get it really clearly. Anybody that does this magic, sorcery, talking to the dead, and astrology, okay, that's what it's talking about. This is a real problem. Anyone found among you. So this is the same anyone. Anyone who does these things, who consults this and much less practices all this stuff, anyone who does these things is detestable to the Lord. Don't we see how that's the opposite of the gospel? We've now moved into not that an indifferent position, but actually you're detestable to the Lord, right? If I've done some of that in the past, at that time I've been detestable. Is it unforgivable? No, we can be forgiven. We just need to separate, right? Is it the sin that is unpardonable? No, absolutely not. Are there Christians who've done this and would I think they could still go to heaven? Sure. Not that we're going to read a verse about them not getting into the kingdom of heaven, people that with this sin stuff. But okay, so anyone who does these things is detestable to the Lord. Because of these same detestable practices, the Lord your God will drive out those nations before you. You must be blameless before the Lord your God. The nations you will dispossess listen to those who practice sorcery and divination. As for you, the Lord your God has not permitted you to do so. So we got two groups. We who've been saved and given our life to God, God does not permit us to use these things. He doesn't say they don't work. He doesn't say that there's not the dead you can speak with, maybe not dead humans, but there's this dead spirit world. Well, he doesn't say that. He just says we're not permitted to deal with it. In fact, he's identifying this as the reason these other nations, right, not God's people, why he's driving them out. He wants you to be blameless. Does that mean perfectly sinless? Of course not. No one is that except Jesus. So he can't be asking us for that, right, as a standard, maybe as a target, but not as the standard. He's talking specifically about this stuff. So let's read in a few other places in the Bible what else he says about it. But this is very, very serious. Detestable to the Lord is not what we want. These three are in Leviticus. And there's a lot more in Leviticus about this. This is another book of Moses. Just when God's talking to his people and Moses is taking notes. Do not turn to mediums. This is God talking. Do not turn to mediums or seek out spiritists, for you will be defiled by them. I am the Lord your God. Man, I remember going to a fair and there was a palm reader or something like that. And I went into the tent with my friends, and thankfully in that moment I turned back. But look at this. We can be defiled by the medium, not just by our own action, where then somehow this engagement is a real problem. Leviticus 20:6. I will set my face against anyone who turns to mediums and spiritists to prostitute themselves by following them. I will cut them off from their people. You see now a connection with the sexual part, and that's usually the same kind of the connection. God looks at it as cheating on them, right? You're going to another husband, right? Leaving God, going to something else. But you see how God's turning his face against. He detests. You're defiled. All these things are the things that 100% separate us in a deep way, much less exposing us to very wicked and harmful entities who hate God. Leviticus 20:27. A man or a woman who is a medium or spiritist among you must be put to death. All right, there you go. You are to stone them. Their blood will be on their own heads. So that's how far. Why should you kill the medium? Because they are corrupting. They are defiling God's children. Right? We don't even hear him talk about this from a crack dealer. Right? We don't hear him talking about this from prostitutes. So, man, it's amazingly strong language. I've not heard this preached in a church in a long time, so I'm sure there are a lot of folks who this is all probably shocking to. right? That the Bible says this stuff. So I got a bunch to read now. So we have the idea of how bad it is, and what terrible consequences we get from God. So now I'm just going to read some, sort of in order. We're still in the Old Testament right now. But, it's full, the New Testament's full of it. Here we go. 1 Samuel 15:23. For rebellion is like the sin of divination, usually called witchcraft, and arrogance, like the evil of idolatry. Because you have rejected the word of the Lord, he has rejected you as king. Okay, because this is where Saul went to a medium, right? And he lost his position as king because of it. 1 Chronicles 10:13. Saul died because he was unfaithful to the Lord. He did not keep the word of the Lord and even consulted a medium for guidance. Not only did it cost him his kingship, but it cost him his life. And he was plagued with evil spirits, as Saul was. And so there's a whole story about that. Not something we want attached with us. Sort of like that movie when they talk about demons being a part of us. Well, that is where they tend to dwell, right? In humans, if you believe the Bible. If not, of course, all us Bible believers are a bunch of morons. But if you believe the Bible, that's bad news. Isaiah 8:19. When someone tells you to consult mediums and spiritists who whisper and mutter, should not a people inquire of their God? Why consult the dead on behalf of the living? Consult God's instruction and the testimony of warning. If anyone does not speak according to this word, they have no light of dawn. Distressed and hungry, they will roam through, this is the demons probably, distressed and hungry, they will roam through the land. When they are famished, they will become enraged, and looking upward will curse their king and their God. Then they will look toward the earth and see only distress and darkness and fearful gloom, and they will be thrust into utter darkness. Utter darkness, we're hell territory, right? That's what that's talking about. See the problem of this? The problem of this is that it brings ruin on people, right? And God is like, we'll kill them with stones, right? That's the God we serve. So it's like no joke, right? Big deal. And it's not like every other sin. Some people, I've heard somebody say every sin's the same. Yeah, well, every sin's the same in a sense that it's, that's unholy or outside of God or is some part of death or has consequences, sure. But the consequences are very different per sin. And this thing of dealing with the underworld and all this other demon stuff is super bad and super dangerous. But who knows it? We don't think that. I mean, we don't. I'm not out picketing, the voodoo hoodoo palm reader down the street. Maybe I should be. Isaiah 19:1-4. A prophecy against Egypt. See, the Lord rides on a swift cloud and is coming to Egypt. The idols of Egypt tremble before him, and the hearts of the Egyptians melt with fear. I will stir up Egyptian against Egyptian. Brother will fight against brother. Neighbor against neighbor. City against city. Kingdom against kingdom. The Egyptians will lose heart, and I will bring their plans to nothing. They will consult the idols and the spirits of the dead, the mediums and the spiritists. I will hand the Egyptians over to the power of a cruel master, and a fierce king will rule over them, declares the Lord and the Almighty. So again, we see that this spirit and mediums are not nothing. Oh no, there's something. Right? And a matter of fact, if you don't have God, I guess that's what we're going with. Luck or looking at the stars and hoping, for this and that. But the reality is that means you're not in God's family, that you're in some other family. I'm not saying that people in God's family don't do that, because absolutely, especially because they don't know any better, right? Or they think it's a game or something else, or just fun curiosity. Yet, we see that it's not that. And again, no condemnation when I'm reading this. I'm really just reading this for information, because I don't think people hear this stuff. Isaiah 47:8. Now then, listen, you lover of pleasure, lounging in your security and saying to yourself, I am and there is none besides me. I will never be a widow or suffer the loss of children. Both of these will overtake you in a minute. On a single day, loss of children and widowhood. They will come upon you in full measure, in spite of your many sorceries and all your potent spells. Now, some people say this will reflect Jezebel, which we read about, and we're doing Revelation in chapters 2 and 3. I think 3. We hear about Jezebel and all these kind of things, and you can read the whole story. But this sorceries, well, she's sorceress, yeah. She was a Baal worshiper, right? She worshipped Baal, other gods. That's what sorcery is. And all the people consulting the mediums, even if they have crosses on the walls and call themselves Christians, it's not. It's remember, Antichrist means instead of Christ, a false Christ. All the New Testament is about false prophets, false preachers. So it's nothing for a person to claim to be a Christian and not be, or even be maliciously Antichrist. Verse 10. You have trusted in your wickedness and have said, no one sees me. Your wisdom and knowledge mislead you when you say to yourself, I am, and there is none beside me. Disaster will come upon you, and you will not know how to conjure it away. A calamity will fall upon you that you cannot ward off with a ransom. A catastrophe will not foresee. You cannot foresee will suddenly come upon you. So that's the idea of foreseeing, right? Telling the future. That's classic. Oh, you're going to marry so-and-so. You're going to have this, or a Ouija board. Right? Ward off with a ransom. That's any kind of sacrifice or gift or paying a fee or whatever else. Conjure away. That's any of these kinds of spells. Right? So it's so common in our world. And totally common. 12. Keep on then with your magic spells and with your many sorceries. You have labored at since childhood. Perhaps you will succeed. Perhaps you'll cause terror. All the counsel you have received has only worn you out. Let your astrologers come forward, those stargazers who make predictions month by month. Let them save you from what is coming upon you. Surely they are like stubble. The fire will burn them. They cannot even save themselves from the power of the flame. These are not coals for warmth. This is not a fire to sit by. Well, what is that fire? That is the real hellfire. Eventually the fire, the burning lake, this lake of fire that the devil and everyone that follows this kind of stuff is thrown into. So, real stuff. Real astrologers. Am I going to stop reading my fortune cookie? Because I do. I look at it. I don't really take it serious. But I've gone back and forth on that one since a kid. The question is am I going to let this change me? Well, I'll tell you one thing I will let it change me on for sure is to be reminded of how precious my relationship with God is. And I don't want to put it at risk because of being involved in things that he sees as nasty. So let's switch over to the New Testament. And I didn't pull anything about demons or devils or anything like that in this set. So let's just read this. This is the last of the verses. Acts 19:17. When this became known to the Jews and Greeks living in Ephesus, they were all seized with fear. In the name of the Lord Jesus was held in high honor. Many of those who believed now came and openly confessed that what they had done. A number who had practiced sorcery brought their scrolls together and burned them publicly. When they calculated the value of the scrolls, the total came to 50,000 drachmas. In this way, the word of the Lord spread widely and grew in power. Now, this one, they'd seen a demonstration of the power of God with Paul. And so these guys in Ephesus, which were big idolaters, it's clearly called sorcery, right? Witchcraft, all that kind of stuff. And they reacted, and they took all their occult stuff and got rid of it. I've done this, and I'm a big advocate of getting rid of any of the occult stuff. So that's the response of these Christians. All right, Galatians 5:19 and 19. The acts of the flesh are obvious: sexual immorality, impurity, debauchery, idolatry, and witchcraft, hatred, discord, jealousy, fits of rage, selfish ambition, dissensions, factions. And it goes on with more, where it'll say that these guys will not see the kingdom of heaven. Well, what we might want to do is go, well, sexual immorality or impurity, debauchery. Oh, well, I'm guilty of all of these, or jealousy, or fits of rage, or selfish ambition. Good night. Everybody's guilty. And we might want to just pass over this idolatry and witchcraft. Look, all of these things have their own problems. Right? Sexual immorality, you're sort of joining yourself with another person, becoming one flesh, and it's a different kind of sin than other sin. Right? That's a big deal. Right? We could go, debauchery or drunkenness and all this kind of stuff. Well, we can see all the problems. Hatred, Jesus says that's like murder. Right? Selfishness, well, that's against the Lord's Prayer. Right? Thy will, not my will. Well, this idolatry and witchcraft, yeah, all these things may connect us with the negative. But this worshiping of devils, Paul will also say, not in Galatians, but in Corinthians, he'll tell you that I would desire that you'd have no fellowship with devils, because that's what it is. That's a big deal. So Galatians 5, you want to read it more. Then a couple out of Revelation, since we're doing Revelation. The light of a lamp will never shine in you again. Whew. The voice of bridegroom and bride will never be heard in you again. Your merchants were the world's important people. By this mystery Babylon, most likely, right? By your magic spell, all the nations were led astray. So, payment's coming. Consequences coming. Unfortunately, all the people that followed this city, this leader, this world system, well, they're unfortunately going to go to the same grave, to the same hell. How did it get there? How did this evil leader lead these nations, all these people, right? By your magic spell, by your sorcery, right? That's how powerful it is. That is how powerful it is. But in Revelation 21:8, and that's like the end of the book. But the cowardly, the unbelieving, the vile, the murderers, the sexually immoral, those who practice magic arts, the idolaters, and all liars, they will be consigned to the fiery lake of burning sulfur. This is the second death, right? So that's really the end of the story of when judgment happens, final judgment. And you'll see how similar it is to Galatians, though it was written much later. You see how powerful God's position on sin is, period. We need to be mindful. So, it sort of serves in focusing specifically into the occult. Look, it's no small thing. It's the magic that leads people astray. I mean, probably all kinds of this other sin we do leads us astray too. But the magic really is about leading others. And it is dealing with devils and unclean spirits. And I've looked in here and had a bunch of verses about possession and affliction of spirits and all that stuff. But so I say all this with love, and just wanted to share these verses about this topic, and then the fact that it's in our culture. I did see that Americans are spending 13.5 hours a day with media, and it is this dark world. But the great news is, God's inviting us into His kingdom because He loves us. And I thank God that He gives us our testimony of salvation. Man, let us not get tangled up, especially with sorcery and such. So, having said that, I say God bless, and I say a prayer, Lord, deliver us from it. And I don't know whether I'll touch on this tonight or not, or just let this suffice. Either way, God bless, and let's all consider the things we're associated with. Bye.